The alarm clock split the morning silence like a gunshot at 5:30 a.m. But what jolted me awake wasn't the sound. It was the mechanical whirring directly above my bedroom ceiling. I stumbled to the window, still half asleep, and froze. A black drone hovered 3 feet from my glass, its red camera light blinking like an angry eye. Below, across my ranch property, more machines buzzed in coordinated patterns, their automated voices crackling through speakers I'd never seen before. Property owner violation detected. Resident status, unauthorized. Please vacate immediately. The voice was cold, robotic, repeating the same message over and over, while cameras mounted on newly installed poles swiveled to track my movement. I hadn't even had my coffee yet, and my own land was treating me like a trespasser. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. The woman's voice on the other end was sharp, efficient, dripping with fake politeness. "Mr. Harrison, this is Karen Stokes, Homeowner Association Digital Compliance Officer. I'm calling to inform you that your residence has been flagged for immediate relocation. Our system shows you're no longer authorized to occupy this property." Before I could respond, she hung up. I threw on my boots and stormed outside, but the scene that greeted me made my blood run cold. Orange cones lined my driveway. Workers in matching uniforms were installing more surveillance equipment along my fence line. A massive electronic billboard had appeared overnight near my mailbox, displaying my photo with the words "Unauthorized occupant, do not assist," scrolling beneath it in red letters. "Hey!" I shouted at the nearest worker, a skinny kid who couldn't have been older than 20. He glanced up from his tablet, scanning some sort of barcode on one of the cameras. "This is my property. What the hell do you think you're doing?" The kid looked genuinely confused, checking his screen again. "Sir, according to our work order, this property was sold yesterday to Karen Stokes. We're just installing the standard security package for the new owner." He showed me his tablet. There was my ranch, my address, and Karen's name listed as the legal owner. The sale date was stamped as 24 hours ago. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. That's impossible. I never sold anything to anyone. But the kid just shrugged, tapping his earpiece. "Control, we have the previous occupant on site. Should we call security?" The voice that crackled back was unmistakably Karen's. "No need. Mr. Harrison will be leaving voluntarily once he understands his legal position. The system doesn't make mistakes." That's when I noticed Trevor's house across the street. My neighbor of 15 years was standing in his driveway, watching the whole spectacle. But when our eyes met, he quickly looked away and disappeared inside. The same Trevor who used to borrow my tools, who I'd helped fix his roof last spring. Now he was treating me like a stranger. I marched over and pounded on his door. When he finally opened it, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Trevor, what's going on? You know this is my ranch." He cleared his throat nervously, glancing at the cameras that seemed to be everywhere now. "Look, Bill, I don't want any trouble. The Homeowner Association sent out a notification to all residents. Said you'd been living here illegally for years, that there was some kind of investigation." He started to close the door. "I'm sorry, but I can't get involved." The door clicked shut, leaving me standing alone on his porch. In the space of one morning, I'd gone from being a respected member of this community to a pariah. The electronic surveillance network had turned my neighbors into strangers and my home into a prison. I walked back to my property, studying the new equipment with growing unease. These weren't ordinary security cameras. They were military-grade surveillance devices, the kind that could track facial recognition, record conversations, even monitor heart rates. Someone had invested serious money in turning my quiet ranch into a digital fortress. And Karen Stokes was just the public face of whatever operation was running the show. That afternoon, I tried calling my lawyer, my bank, even the county clerk's office. Every phone call led to the same dead end. According to all official records, I had voluntarily sold my property to Karen Stokes for $1. The sale was legally binding, properly notarized, with my signature on every document, except I'd never signed anything. As the sun began to set, I sat on my porch, watching the drones patrol my airspace like mechanical vultures. The isolation was suffocating. Every neighbor who drove past averted their eyes. The mailman left my mail at the end of the driveway instead of walking to the house. Even the local grocery store clerk had given me strange looks that morning, as if my face had been broadcast on some community blacklist. That's when I heard the rumble of an old pickup truck pulling into my driveway. A young woman climbed out, mid-20s, short black hair, wearing a faded military surplus jacket and carrying a laptop bag that looked like it had seen better days. She walked with the confident stride of someone who didn't give a damn about the cameras recording her every step. "You must be Bill Harrison," she said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Abby Chen. I live in the trailer park about 2 miles down the road." Her grip was firm, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "I heard about your situation through the local network chatter. Thought you might want to know who's really behind this digital circus." She gestured at the surveillance equipment surrounding us. "This isn't just Karen Stokes playing neighborhood queen. Someone's been planning this takeover for months, using the Homeowner Association as a front. They've digitized the entire community control system. Property records, resident databases, even the grocery store loyalty programs. They can track every person, every transaction, every conversation in this area." I studied her face, trying to read her motives. "Why are you telling me this? And more importantly, why should I trust you?" Abby's expression darkened. "Because my father used to own the auto repair shop in town until this same system drove him out of business last year. He died of a heart attack 3 weeks after losing everything, still believing he'd somehow failed." She opened her laptop, showing me streams of code that meant nothing to me, but everything to her. "Karen Stokes destroyed my family through legal theft, and now she's doing the same thing to you. The difference is, I know how to fight back." The surveillance cameras whirred, adjusting their angles to capture our conversation. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The next morning brought a new level of digital harassment that made the previous day look like a warm-up. I woke to find my face plastered across every electronic billboard in town, accompanied by text that made my stomach turn. "Wanted, Bill Harrison, suspected of elder fraud, property theft, and intimidation of local officials." Below that, in smaller print, "Do not approach. Contact Homeowner Association immediately." The lies were so outrageous they should have been laughable, but the effect was devastating. When I tried to buy groceries, the clerk's hands shook as she scanned my credit card. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, but the system shows your account is flagged for suspicious activity." She wouldn't meet my eyes as she handed back my card. "Maybe try another store?" But there was no other store to try. The digital network had branded me as a threat across the entire community, and Karen Stokes was orchestrating every move from behind her wall of technology. I drove through town, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life, watching neighbors I'd known for decades cross the street to avoid me. That evening, Abby returned with her laptop and a thermos of coffee that tasted like motor oil, but felt like salvation. We sat in my darkened living room, curtains drawn against the watching cameras, while she explained the scope of what we were facing. "The Homeowner Association has been taken over by a tech company called Digital Community Solutions," she said, fingers flying across her keyboard. "They specialize in turning small towns into smart cities, but what they're really doing is creating surveillance states. Karen's just their local puppet, drunk on the power they've given her." She showed me footage from hacked security cameras around town. Karen meeting with men in expensive suits, signing contracts, nodding eagerly as they explained how the new system would give her unprecedented control over every resident. In one particularly damning clip, I watched her laugh while reviewing my fabricated criminal profile. "She's not just stealing your property," Abby continued. "She's beta testing a system that will eventually roll out to communities across the country. Your ranch was chosen because it's isolated, valuable, and you live alone. Perfect test case for digital displacement." I felt my hands clench into fists. "So what's the plan? How do we fight a computer system?" Abby's smile was sharp as a blade. We turn their own weapons against them. The same surveillance network they are using to control everyone can be hacked, manipulated, and fed false information. But first, we need to make them believe they've won completely. Over the next 3 days, we put her plan into motion. I played the part of the broken old man, making public appearances where I looked defeated, confused, even slightly unstable. I let Karen see me arguing with empty air, stumbling through conversations, behaving like someone whose grip on reality was slipping. Meanwhile, Abby worked her digital magic. She created a fake identity, a wealthy investor from overseas who'd been monitoring the local real estate market through the same surveillance network. This fictional buyer, she explained, was willing to pay triple market value for properties in digitally enhanced communities, but required absolute secrecy due to his controversial business dealings. The hook was simple. Karen could flip my ranch for massive profit, but only if she moved fast and kept the transaction completely off the official records. On Thursday afternoon, I played my final scene as the defeated victim. I called Karen directly, my voice shaking with what she assumed was fear, but was actually barely controlled rage. "Karen, I can't take this anymore. The whole town thinks I'm a criminal. I'll sign whatever you want. Just make it stop." She practically purred with satisfaction. "Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry it came to this, but you brought this on yourself by being so stubborn. Fortunately, I'm willing to be generous. I'll give you 24 hours to pack your belongings and leave quietly. In return, I won't press charges for the property fraud." That evening, Abby and I sat in the gathering darkness, watching the surveillance drones patrol my airspace. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," she said. "Karen's greed is about to become her downfall, but this gets dangerous from here. Once we start manipulating their system, they'll know someone's fighting back." I thought about my late wife Sarah, how she'd always said the hardest battles were fought not with fists, but with brains. What's the worst that can happen? They could have us arrested for computer crimes, terrorism charges, anything they want. The system is designed to protect itself by destroying threats. Abby closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Because once we start, there's no backing down." I stared out at my ranch, the land I'd worked for 30 years, where Sarah and I had planned to grow old together, where I'd buried 3 dogs and planted an orchard that was just starting to bear fruit. The surveillance lights cast everything in a cold, artificial glow that made even familiar corners look alien. "Let me tell you something about backing down," I said. "I spent 2 tours in Vietnam watching good men die because politicians back home made decisions based on fear instead of principle. Yeah, I came home and worked construction for 20 years, watching developers tear down communities to build strip malls. Then I bought this ranch because I thought I'd found a place that couldn't be stolen by men in suits with briefcases." I turned to face her. I was wrong about it being safe, but I wasn't wrong about it being worth fighting for. Karen Stokes and her digital overlords picked the wrong old man to mess with. Abby nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow, we give them a war they'll never forget." The next morning, Karen arrived at my ranch in a black SUV with tinted windows, accompanied by 2 men who looked more like corporate security than real estate agents. She was dressed in what I assumed was her power outfit, a sharp business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. And she carried herself with the swagger of someone who'd never faced real consequences for her actions. "Bill," she said, not bothering to hide her contempt, "I hope you've had time to reconsider your position. My associates here represent some very serious investors who don't appreciate delays." I played my part perfectly, shoulders slumped, voice defeated. "I just want this nightmare to end, Karen. Where do I sign?" But as she pulled out her tablet to show me the transfer documents, Abby's invisible presence began to work its magic. The surveillance cameras around us weren't just recording anymore. They were being fed a completely different reality, one where Karen was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The real battle was about to begin. The signing ceremony Karen had orchestrated was pure theater. cameras rolling, documents spread across my kitchen table like a feast of conquest, her security goons standing at attention while she savored what she believed was her moment of total victory. What she didn't know was that every electronic device in the room was now under Abby's control, broadcasting a carefully crafted performance to a very different audience than the one Karen intended. "Before we finalize this," Karen said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I want you to understand that this is really for the best, Bill. The community needs modern leadership, digital integration. You're just too old-fashioned to appreciate what we're building here." I nodded weakly, playing the broken man to perfection. "I suppose you're right. I just want to understand who I'm really signing this over to." Karen's smile faltered slightly. "Well, technically, you're signing it over to me, but there may be subsequent transactions that are frankly above your pay grade to understand." "Try me," I said quietly. That's when her mask slipped completely. Maybe it was the stress of managing such an elaborate deception, or maybe she was just drunk on power, but Karen launched into a detailed explanation of the entire operation. She bragged about how Digital Community Solutions had chosen our town as a pilot program for residential displacement through digital coercion. She laughed about the fake criminal charges, the manipulated property records, the way they'd turn my neighbors against me with fabricated evidence. "The beautiful thing," she continued, gesturing grandly at the surveillance equipment visible through my windows, "is that once we perfect this system here, we can roll it out anywhere. Any property owner who doesn't fit the demographic profile can be digitally erased and relocated. It's clean, it's legal, and it's incredibly profitable." What Karen didn't realize was that every word she spoke was being recorded and simultaneously broadcast to the real investor Abby had created, who wasn't fictional at all, but rather a federal investigator specializing in digital fraud who'd been tracking Digital Community Solutions for months. The surveillance network that was supposed to protect Karen's operation had become the instrument of its destruction. The investigator, Agent Sarah Chen, Abby's older sister as it turned out, had been building a case against Digital Community Solutions, but lacked the evidence needed for prosecution. Karen's confession, delivered directly through her own surveillance system, was exactly the smoking gun they needed. But the real genius of Abby's plan wasn't just the federal case. While Karen monologued about her criminal enterprise, the manipulated surveillance network was broadcasting her confession to every device in the community. The same digital bulletin boards that had displayed my fake criminal profile were now showing Karen's real crimes to every resident in town. The phone started ringing first, neighbors calling neighbors, asking if they were seeing what was being broadcast across every screen in the area. Then came the cars, residents driving past my ranch to witness the spectacle of Karen Stokes being exposed as a fraud and a thief. Karen noticed the commotion outside and glanced at her tablet, expecting to see her usual controlling interface. Instead, she found herself staring at her own face on the screen, her voice echoing back her detailed confession about digital coercion and illegal property seizures. Her expression went through a fascinating evolution: confusion, disbelief, and finally, pure panic. How is this?" she stammered, frantically tapping at her device while her security team exchanged nervous glances. "Funny thing about surveillance systems," I said, dropping the act of defeated old man and meeting her eyes with steel. "They only work when you control them, but when someone smarter than you takes that control away, they become weapons pointed in the exact opposite direction." Abby emerged from where she'd been hiding in my back room, laptop in hand, grinning like a cat who just cornered a very fat mouse. "Karen Stokes, meet my sister, Federal Agent Sarah Chen. I believe she has some questions about your business practices." The black SUVs that pulled into my driveway weren't Digital Community Solutions security. They were federal agents armed with arrest warrants. As they took Karen into custody, she kept screaming about property rights and legal contracts, but the evidence of her criminal conspiracy was literally broadcasting on every screen in town. The community reaction was swift and decisive. The same neighbors who'd shunned me 48 hours earlier were now lining up to apologize, to offer help, to demand answers about how they'd been manipulated by the surveillance system. Trevor, my neighbor who'd turned his back on me, stood on my porch with tears in his eyes. "Bill, I'm so sorry. We all got those notifications, saw those fake charges, and we believed the system instead of believing in you." He shook his head in disgust. "How did we become the kind of people who trust computers over the friends we've known for decades?" I clasped his shoulder, feeling the weight of community restoration settling over us like a warm blanket. "We all got played, Trevor. The important thing is we figured it out before it was too late." But even as the immediate crisis resolved, I found myself changed by the experience in ways I hadn't expected. The surveillance equipment was being removed, Karen's criminal network was being dismantled, and my property rights were being restored, but the scars of digital warfare ran deeper than surface victories. That evening, as Abby packed up her equipment, she paused to study my face. "You don't look like someone who just won a major battle." I gazed out at my ranch, trying to recapture the sense of peace I'd once felt in this place. I got my land back, but I lost something else. The illusion that I was safe from the modern world, that this little corner of America was somehow protected from the kinds of people who see communities as resources to be harvested. Abby nodded thoughtfully. "The price of staying free is staying vigilant. That's what my father never understood. He thought honest work and good neighbors were enough protection. But Karen Stokes taught us both that predators have evolved. They don't just take what you have anymore. They make you complicit in losing it." 3 weeks later, I received a call from Agent Chen informing me that Digital Community Solutions had been shut down, its executives facing federal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and violations of privacy laws. Karen herself was looking at 15 years in federal prison, her dreams of digital dominion reduced to a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked technological power. My ranch was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The surveillance cameras were gone, but I'd installed my own security system, one I controlled, one that couldn't be manipulated by corporate predators or power-hungry neighbors. I'd learned to fight back against digital warfare, but more importantly, I'd learned that the price of freedom in the modern age requires constant adaptation. Sometimes, in the evening light, I still think about Karen's words during her confession. Any property owner who doesn't fit the demographic profile can be digitally erased and relocated. The terrifying thing wasn't that she said it. It was how casually she said it, like she was describing a simple business process rather than the systematic destruction of American communities. I kept my ranch, but I also kept the lesson. In a world where your reputation, your history, and even your legal rights can be altered with a few keystrokes, survival depends not just on defending what you have, but on understanding the weapons being used against you. And sometimes, the best defense is turning those weapons back on the people who thought they were untouchable. The surveillance state that was meant to control me became the instrument of my liberation. But the real victory wasn't technological. It was remembering that communities are stronger than the systems designed to divide them, and that even in an age of digital deception, truth has a way of finding the light.